So our next speaker is going to talk to us about leadership, the gravity of change, what it is, and how to break free. To speak to you about ways you can effectively embrace and lead change in order to deliver exceptional performance, please welcome Robert Rothman, President of the Gap International.
Morning.
So a little bit about Robert. He has been with the company for over 30 years. He's a consultant to CEOs and many C-suite executives in major industries. He's a regular speaker at corporate meetings and business events on such topics as embracing change, building a future-ready organization, leading in the ambition zone, and others, which he has delivered around the world. A little bit about Gap International. It's a global performance consulting company that works with executives to produce extraordinary results. And Robert's going to share with you a little fun fact about his family.
Oh, I thought you were going to do that. I'm going to do that. I was telling Yvonne that my dad is obsessed. Well, he's not living anymore. But he was obsessed with Spain. Spain was it. So in his 40s, he decides he's going to learn Spanish. I'm just going to become fluent in Spanish. And we're like, okay. And he did. And then he said, I'm going to master the guitar. He didn't play guitar. Not only did he do that, but he mastered Carlos Montoya and flamenco, and we had to listen to him. All the time. Oh, well. God bless Dad. Thank you very much for having me this morning. My name is Bob Rothman. I'm the president of Gap International. I'm very excited to talk about the gravity of change, what it is, how to break free, and I thought the way that we would start this would be by addressing a quote from Abraham Lincoln. Now, he's addressing Congress on December 1st of 1862, that's 157 years ago. And this is what he says: "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, so we must think anew and act anew. We must disenthrall ourselves from the past." 157 years ago. Now, the problem of change has been around for a very long time, from the days of Lincoln to now, and over my 30 years in the business of consulting businesses around the world, change is at the heart of almost every issue. So when leaders who are seeking a new level of performance go to make change happen, they inevitably face the gravity of what already exists. It's got weight, it's got mass, it's got inertia. Gravity pulls people towards playing it safe, staying within the status quo, not rocking the boat, being careful, cautious, protective of the current state. And what about so-called resistance? Resistance to change? Nothing like a new technology or a new system to uproot a person's certainty and knock them into unfamiliar ground. In general, we think that technology and money are going to solve things. That conversation is louder today than it's ever been. And it can easily appear as if we live in a technology economy fueled by computing networks, processing speeds, and innovation, or an economy shaped by big data, collecting, measuring, analyzing for the optimum solution. But what's missing in the equation, the thing that's missing in the equation, is people. 5 of the most valuable companies right now happen to be US-based technology companies. The thing we must understand is these companies are not about technology at all. They're about people. People created Microsoft. People created Apple, Google, Amazon, Facebook. And what keeps them at the top is not the technology, although it's obviously critical, it's the people. People are the source of exceptional performance. They're behind all of this, the technology, the AI, the big data. They are the innovators. Our people are the key. They are the real value creators. But they can also be the blockers. And I wish to share with you why they might be doing this, why they might be resisting, why they might be fighting back, why they seemingly align on something only to find out in reality that they didn't. We're spending our careers investing in building our companies to be better, more efficient, modernizing them, transforming them, making them more competitive and best in class. For a lot of people, it's technology. But unless we understand people and performance and unlock the barrier that we call change, allowing people to embrace the very things that they may be resisting or they can't seem to see, what they may be fighting, where they may be blocked, it will be tough to move forward. So here's the main point I want to make out of our discussion today, and that is that the key to leading change is understanding the nature of change, what the design is in the background, what are the forces at play. Now, I'd like to take the conversation out of business for a minute. I'd like us to go shopping at an IKEA furniture store. You know, the place where we go to buy furniture that we all can build ourselves. Now, I have another fun fact. I have a 27-year-old, a 25-year-old, and an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old. So I've not only mastered professional change, but I have mastered personal change as well. Now, in this case, the younger kids, they need desks because they have to study. So we drive to the IKEA in our area, kids totally excited. We walk through the maze of inventory using a shopping cart that has a mind of its own. You all know this if you've been to IKEA. You know exactly what I'm talking about. We find the desk upstairs, then we go downstairs to the warehouse and go on a hunting expedition for the right aisle, the right row, the right section. We purchase the desk. We go, I hope it fits in the back of the car. Somehow we manage. It does. All good. Off we go. Time to build the desks. We get home. We tear the boxes. Get everything on the floor. I glance over the materials and the instructions. I jump right in. After all, there are 4 legs, there's a couple of drawers, and there's a desktop. How hard can this be? This will take no time at all. My kids, they see I'm into it. I can't wait to see their expression when it's done. Sammy and Mia, they're going to be so happy. I'm moving, I'm grooving, and the kids are watching as the desk comes alive. But then it happens. I've just had a realization that I've connected 2 sections that aren't supposed to be connected. Somehow the draw's upside down when I put it in the desk, and only then do I see these up and down symbols that I should have seen 60 minutes ago. How did this happen? So after a few internal discussions with myself, I take it apart, I redo it, I hopefully don't say anything that I regret in front of the kids. I'm sweating, I'm frustrated, I'm wishing I'd hired someone to do this. Why the heck did I do this? It finally gets done, but it takes a lot longer than I thought. I've got my new desk, but boy, did that take something. Did not go as I expected. So you say, how is IKEA related to our discussion on change? You may be asking that. When we take the time to understand the design of what we want to accomplish, we can be more efficient and effective in delivering the outcome. all too often, we jump into the excitement of getting something done and then become frustrated with how things didn't go the way we thought they were going to go because we didn't take the time to understand the background design. Now, I'm not suggesting there isn't a tremendous amount of planning and expertise that goes into the initiatives we lead. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, like with IKEA furniture, from opening the box to taking the pieces out to all the hardware to the white instruction sheet, it all seems so straightforward. But there are invisible forces at play, and they show up after we make our mistakes. What I'm suggesting is that we study the design and the invisible forces in the background that thwart our efforts to effecting the change we're all committed to. Now, a great analogy we found is related to Isaac Newton. I found this very relevant for our discussion today. I'm referring to Newton's 3 laws of motion, which was at the time a way of describing and understanding the physical universe. I'm not a scientist nor a physicist, but as my PhD friends tell me at the company, the laws of motion explain the invisible forces that govern the physical universe. And we're going to draw parallels to those invisible forces that enable or impede change. Newton's 3 laws of motion are so relevant as we navigate modern-day business, so let's take a look at them. The 3 laws of motion are as follows. Number 1, a body persists in the state of rest or of uniform motion unless acted upon by an external unbalanced force. Simply said, nothing changes without the application of an outside force. Number 2, the rate of change in motion of an object is proportional to the force acting upon it and inversely proportional to its mass, meaning the amount of effort required to cause change is determined by the size of the change you want to make and how fast you want to make it. And then number 3, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. When you try to bring change about change, people will have a reaction equal to the amount of change you're bringing. So those are Newton's laws, and I thought what we would do is also, I want to just show a model quickly, just to explain change in a different context, and then we're going to come back to Newton's laws. So let's create a playing field. So the playing field is on one side, on one axis you have reality, and on the other axis you have possibility. That's our playing field. You're a business, there's a marketplace. Your job as a business is to give the marketplace what the marketplace wants. If the marketplace accepts what you're giving them, then you have a business, you start to replicate, you create structure, you create foundations, you automatize, you do anything, everything you can to continue to give that marketplace what it wants. That is a successful formula. We'll call that business as usual. That's a good place to be. The only problem with that is, see, it's pretty high in reality. You don't need much possibility. What I mean by that, creativity, innovation, because you've already created. Whatever it is, it's already done. You're giving the marketplace what it wants. All good. If the marketplace shifts, government regulation, pricing, that person in the garage all of a sudden comes out and comes into your space, and now all of a sudden, you're not so on steady ground in terms of reality. Reality drops. You're kind of in a crisis. Because now, the marketplace isn't accepting what you've been giving them, but you've gotten so used to doing it that way, it's a little bit tough. You're a little bit lost. So this is the opportunity to step out into that possibility zone, that thinking unorthodox, kind of getting in the possibility space, the creativity space. You're able to do things you weren't able to do because now you have to do it before you didn't have to do it. And if you're successful, you create this new reality. Boom, now you've got this new reality, and then the cycle starts all over again. I mean, have you ever noticed that when there's a crisis, all of a sudden it kind of liberates people until the crisis goes away? and then everybody just kind of draws back into the way they were again. That seems to be the cycle. So, here's what's important about this. The main point of our discussion related to getting up underneath change is to appreciate the power and the gravity of that business as usual quadrant. That's what's key in this discussion. There's a tremendous, this is the problem. There's a tremendous asset in being in that place that grounds people. People want to be grounded in reality. They need to be grounded in reality. You can go play in the skinny branches for a bit, but we have to be grounded in reality because it gives people certainty. We love certainty. It allows the world to move in a steady state. That's all good. However, and this is the big however in this, if you need people to think differently, and we all do, if we need to kind of disrupt the current state, we know we've got to do some kind of disruption because we can't keep going this way. When we've got to kind of get people to a different place, it's really tough to do that, especially when there's not a crisis as your impetus for change. When there's no crisis as an impetus for change, how do you get people to move when they're winning? And it's not because they don't want to change. That's not really it at all. But rather, they have to stay where they are. Like I said, they're winning in business as usual. They know what to expect. They have certainty. They have clarity. They can produce a good result over and over again. Why on earth would anyone dare take a chance on something that's unpredictable and can make them look bad? The math just doesn't add up. Especially, like I said, when there isn't a crisis. So it's important when leading change to understand the invisible forces that come with the change you're out to cause. If you don't, people will more likely to be victimized by the change. They won't own it, or they won't lead it and own it with you. So if you're going to cause change, you want to have a deep appreciation for what Newton is saying. So let's spend some time and let's study the invisible forces and appreciate the design of the laws of motion and how they apply to us. So we'll look at all three of Newton's laws. We'll start with the first one. A body persists in a state of rest or of uniform motion unless acted upon by an external, unbalanced force. Nothing changes without the application of an outside force. So, it's 1976. A publicly traded healthcare services company was founded. This company serviced senior living homes and hospitals at the time with various linen services. As the company found their niche, they grew by acquisition and by the mid-90s had diversified into dining services. In the meantime, the baby boomers were starting to age and the rise of the senior living options were increasing at great rates. By the mid-2010s, the company employed over 60,000 people and the only CEO that they ever had was stepping down. His replacement was a much younger man who had been with the company for 10 years. This was a company built on many acquisitions, representing many different parts of the country, many systems and processes in place, as you can imagine. Deals were made based on personal relationships, so terms and conditions of doing business was varied. Many of the policies and the protocols and the procedures were unwritten. The employees had been with the company for a very long time, and things were done the way they were always done. And yet, from 1976 until today, they grew every year. Now, enter the new CEO. He wanted to take the company someplace else. The company was beginning to experience industry challenges with their customer base due to changes in regulations and reimbursements within the healthcare world. This new-to-role CEO had a vision for the future. In a sense, he wanted to reinvent the company while preserving the legacy, preserving the roots of what made the company so successful to date. So here's the CEO. He has a bold ambition for the future of the company. He wants to create one culture for the entire system versus multiple cultures. He wants accountability to be a positive and the active ingredient in the business versus something that they avoid. He wants to reframe the context in which the company operates, moving away from a do what I'm supposed to get done mindset to a going beyond mindset. In his mind, it was laid out perfectly, just like the IKEA instructions. Simple, easy to follow. Sure, it'll take some time, but he knew exactly where he wanted to take the company. The problem was that when he went down the path, eager, jumping right in, really excited, he got very little traction on his ambition. He was perplexed, frustrated, and he started questioning himself as a leader. He didn't see the invisible forces at play. He didn't see the invisible forces at play, so let's look at what that was. The company was, as Newton would say, persisting in a state of rest. Complacency was the status quo. After futile attempts to jumpstart people, try to align the people, he saw the monster. It was the mindset. People's minds were set. They were immovable. They were certain. They were fixed. Their past performance, 1976 until today, their past performance was proof of future success. They were good, and they didn't need to change. And this is what the set mind sounded like. We're already successful. Why should we change? Things are fine as they are. We know our business better than anyone. Our relationships have always pulled us through. Now, the CEO knew trying to show them another way, convince them of another way, prove to them that there was gold at the end of a different rainbow was useless. Because he had tried all that and he got nowhere. Talk about an invisible force. But this was a big moment of leadership for him, something not taught in school. It was his moment of truth. He wanted to take the company somewhere else, someplace else, and yet the company was happy to stay put. However, he appreciated the design in the background. He saw the mindset was fixed, and he saw that if he truly wanted to take the company someplace else, he would have to become the outside force Newton was talking about. So he was thoughtful and methodical. And the first thing that he did was he had to take some significant steps to effect change. So what does he do? He gets his top 50 leaders, starting with his immediate team. He then brought his broader management team, 200 people together, in an unprecedented event for the history of this company. They've never, ever done anything like this before. For an event to begin to create the possibility of a different company. By the time that event was done, the company's heritage stayed intact, the relationships stayed intact, the roots stayed intact, but the company had taken their first step on a path creating a new vision, set of values, a new DNA for the company. And this is the critical piece. It's probably the most important part of this first law. Rather than work on top of the old mindset, he brought it out. He discussed it, created space for everyone to examine it, and here's the question. to see if the current mindset was sufficient for these times. It became safe for the 200 leaders to consider a new world. It was magic. This is the case where the CEO appreciated the design of the state of rest as the invisible force. He got the mindset of complacency, chose to be the outside force to disrupt the current state. And he appreciated the journey he was going to take his company on, knowing it wouldn't be easy, but now better prepared to take his people along. Okay, law number 2. The rate of change in motion of an object is proportional to the force acting upon it and inversely proportional to its mass. Meaning the amount of effort required to cause change is determined by the size of the change you want to make and how fast you want to make it. Okay? Imagine this. You own distribution businesses with marketing rights to the biggest and the most well-known brands around the world. That's who you are. You own the marketing rights to the biggest and most well-known brands around the world. That's you. You operate in places like Dubai, Tokyo, Shanghai. You're in Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Cape Town, Sydney, Sao Paulo. And the list goes on and on. You own car dealerships, represent fashion brands, jewelry, perfume, and for our purposes, wine and spirits. Your family built the empire you now own. You are one of the rich and famous in the countries that you operate in. Nobody tells you what to do. Then there's the wholesaler, the #1 wine and spirits company in the world, selling to those rich and famous. This wholesaler had a very large distribution network filled with these savvy entrepreneurs. The problem was that they were at odds with each other all the time. So, the current relationship was mistrustful. Distributors didn't trust the wholesalers didn't trust the distributors. Wholesalers cared more about their margins, and their pricing strategies often had an adverse effect on the distributors. Distributors wanted more advertising and promotion dollars to drive more business, but the wholesaler never saw the value in giving them more money because they knew the distributors would probably put that money towards their bottom line, not to advertise and promote. This created a vicious circle where the wholesaler and the distributors were always right about each other. Another way of saying this is they both are holding fast to their opinion of each other. The wholesaler needed the distributors to sell products. The distributors needed the wholesalers because of the brand power. As I said, they didn't like each other, they didn't trust each other, and they both knew they only cared about their own interests. As President Lincoln said, we must disenthrall ourselves from the past. And the wholesaler knew that they had to do that. But, and this starts to poke at the invisible force, when people are stuck in their point of view, it's not so easy. It's not so easy to disenthrall ourselves from the past when we're kind of stuck in what we believe to be true. When people are stuck in their point of view, it's not easy. The wholesaler is certain about the distributor, and the distributor is certain about the wholesaler. They both think their way is right. Just imagine performance in this context. Results were incremental for everyone, at best. So enter Newton's second law. The rate of change in motion of an object is proportional to the force acting upon it and inversely proportional to its mass. So I remember sitting with the president one day, reflecting on their performance. He saw that no matter what he did, an attempt he made, his business was growing at 5% annually, and he wasn't happy. He saw how right his assessments and opinions were about the distributors. I asked him, I'll never forget this, I asked him, so, are you willing to be wrong about what you're right about? He did not like that conversation at all. He didn't. As a matter of fact, I remember him getting a bit hot about the whole thing. But there were some background assumptions, unquestioned truths he was believing, that he was perpetuating every day. He would, the distributors are out for themselves. He would say that to himself. They're out for themselves. They're not trustworthy. They're not trustworthy. And they don't care about us at all. The distributors, they don't care about us at all. He'd say it like that, just like that, the truth. I asked him, if you really think this, don't you think they feel it? And if they think this about you, then you're both in this perpetual loop about each other for eternity. That got him. That got him. He stopped. He stopped. He stopped. He stopped. He stopped. That was like, ouch. He saw the background design, the invisible force of his certainty, the invisible force of his certainty was preventing anything from changing. Then, in the next moment, because he got it, click, he saw it, he got it, and in the next moment, he changed. He knew exactly what to do. He put a stake in the ground to create amazing relationships with their distributors. First, he shifted his language to partners, distributor partners. That helped him reframe his thinking about the distributors. As you can imagine that the distributor partners were highly cynical about this, distributor partners. Really? They were certain the wholesaler was up to something. But the president anticipated the reaction. He embraced it. He didn't try to change their minds. He simply lived by his words and stood by his commitments to create partners, to grow the business together. He developed an approach to work together on what he called joined-up business planning, where every year they would build their budgets together so that the needs, the concerns of both parties were considered. He brought the global networks of distributor partners together on an annual basis to create learning experiences. And he created focus groups where regional distributors studied how to improve the quality of doing business with their retail partners and ultimately the consumer. Within a 5-year journey, the wholesalers' annual growth went from 5% to 28%. And their distribution partners enjoyed similar growth as well. So in the context of the second law of motion, the distributor partners, they were the mass. The president of the wholesaler became a force proportional to the mass. He saw the design, the invisible force of his certainty, and he began a journey of building alignment and relationship. This made the weight of the mass lighter, and they were able to accelerate. So back to what I said earlier, people are the key. In this case, the president. He meant it in his language, his behaviors, his actions. He was talk, not walk. I think it's worth asking ourselves the question about how certain we are about things. Maybe being certain has unintended consequences. It's just worth thinking about. Maybe being certain about things is worth a reflection. I can tell you from personal experience that if I'm being certain about something and it's not serving the outcome I want, then I have an invisible force at play. And that's tough, to be honest with yourself that way. But it's a great question. It's really worth asking that question. If I'm being certain about something and it's not serving the outcome I want, then something's in play, and it's not them. Okay. Number 3, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. When you try to bring about change, people will have a reaction equal to the amount of change you're bringing. So, a company we're working with asked me to go to Vietnam recently. I was in Vietnam recently, and I'd never been there before. And while I know the world has moved on, my notions of Vietnam are built off of watching Walter Cronkite on the CBS Evening News. I remember sitting in front of the TV as an 8-year-old in the late 60s, not really understanding what I was watching, but I knew it wasn't good. And here I was all these years later. I was in Hanoi to explore how the Vietnamese have this incredible resilience about themselves. They have managed to stave off the likes of the Chinese, the French, the Americans. It's remarkable. Centuries of threat, and yet their sense of purpose as a country, their roots in Buddhism, Christianity, and the multitude of religions keep them strong in mind and in spirit. Now, the company we're working with has 90,000 people. They're global. They're in an industry that has a direct impact on the health of the earth itself. I was on a scouting expedition for a conference that will do with their top 250 leaders, a technical conference. And the person I'm working with is the technical leader, is a gentleman who genuinely wants to make the world a better place. For him, this conference is not about technology. As a matter of fact, he coins this conference as the non-technical technical conference. For him, it's about people. It's about having the key leaders of his company get that their job is to make a better world for our generation and generations to come. It's not about being more efficient, innovative, technically savvy, and of course, he wants all that, obviously, he's the technical leader. But he wants a conference where the 250 leaders connect their mind to their spirit. It's about having people get who they really are, beings, committed to contributing, making a difference, making the world a better place. This is the change he wants to make happen. Now, the invisible force he faced was within himself, and that was to give himself permission to be about what he's really about. Be about what he really cared about. His people's willingness and ability to work at a higher level. I mean, growth, profits, efficiencies in operation didn't have to be the sole focus of work. He realized that all of that would be a natural byproduct of him standing for what he really believed in and cared about, the company's contribution to a better planet. Back to Newton's third law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. The leader wants his people to innovate themselves. What does that mean? How do I innovate myself? If I could have, I would have. I can see innovation in products. How do I see innovation in me? He's now created a crisis which is an equal force necessary for the change needed. Here's a leader. So here's a leader who's committed to bringing about change, and how his leaders think about themselves. We would welcome this, wouldn't we? This is music to our ears. This is the kind of boss we all dream of, a purposeful soul who's not all about money and greed and moving up the corporate ladder just to claim a title. This is wonderful, no? No. No, 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 no. People are likely to think this person is a threat. He's asking me to care about something greater than my mandate. He's asking me to reach beyond the guardrails of my corporate role. He's asking me to think in a new way about my responsibilities and how I express myself. I have spent my career building my skills, getting better and better, jumping through the hurdles that I have to face to be a great leader. He's asking me to go out of my comfort zone. He's asking me to take risks. What if I fail? Does he realize how I might look? For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, here's how I think it's going to go in the upcoming conference. I bet the people in this conference, their own invisible force is going to come into play. The fears of what it might mean to innovate themselves. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. It's perfectly human. We talk to ourselves, let ourselves dream, be bold, daring. We know the difference we could make. We even get close to taking that first step forward, and then we talk ourselves right out of it. We've all done it. The leader got the background design. He sees the invisible force at play, the gravitational pull to hedge our own bets, take a little off who we could be. Now, his conversation, he's with 250 giants. Now, all he has to do is deal with the equal and opposite reaction he predicts will come his way. He's ready. He understands that his people are the key to transform the company. So when I was thinking about being with you, I thought, man, I'm going to be with all these top technical leaders. I bet they have great ambitions. I bet they want to make a big difference, be a source of pride for their companies, their families, their communities. And then I thought, these kind of endeavors, initiatives, projects that we're all dealing with require aligning the organization to new possibilities that are not fully defined yet or even understood yet in terms of delivering targeted results. We must focus everyone on finding pathways to deliver these targeted results, which includes developing new technical, social, and commercial solutions to old problems. And at the same time, delivering these changes in timeframes that bear no relation to what has been achieved in the past. That is, delivering something we can't see yet in a time frame we may not believe is possible. These are the breakthroughs. These are our breakthroughs, punching out of the gravity that holds us back. How? By appreciating the design of the change and seeing the invisible forces at play. In our discussion, the mindsets, the unquestioned certainties, and how potentially we hedge our own bets. So in closing, let's reflect on Newton's laws of motion. Nothing changes without the application of an outside force. The amount of effort required to cause change is determined by the size of the change you want to make and how fast you want to make it. And when you try to bring about change, people will have a reaction equal to the amount of change you're bringing. I have a deep appreciation of leaders like you. You take companies to the next level. You allow people to imagine what's possible. You give people confidence that they can get better and better. They may not appreciate it in the beginning, but once they surrender into the new world that you're creating and bringing forth, they love you. They even get mad at you for not bringing it sooner. In one way, technology is about making the world better and more efficient. But in my view, technology is about giving people the opportunity to light up, to go beyond what they think is possible, and liberating their imaginations to bring about a better world. All this is accomplished by people. People are the key. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.